The following is a presentation of the events surrounding the Gulf of Mexico devastation and the ensuing Gulf states destruction. For the sake of continuity, this will be presented in 3 videos, or acts. The first, this, being the disaster, the second, the year following the disaster, and the third, post or current status of the underlying intent of the disaster. Each of these segments stand alone on their own merit, but it's important for you to view them in order so you grasp the full scope of this diabolical plan. Since the 50s, geologists from the USGS, Department of Interior, and NOAA have warned about drilling in the Gulf of Mexico due in part to the fragility of the seafloor and subsea floor geological composition, including volcanoes, fault lines, including the new Madrid fault, and a network of salt domes lying several hundred feet below the seafloor, extending up through the landmass of the Gulf Coast states in a region encompassing what is known as the Louann Salt Layer. The BP Macondo disaster was not an accident. Whether by design or default, Big Oil, NOAA, and the USGS knew concentrated drilling in the Gulf of Mexico would inevitably lead to catastrophe. Let's look at the facts. You be the judge. My research links are in the comment sections of this video. By now it appears evident that the Gulf of Mexico and Gulf Coast states are being contaminated to the point where they will be unsuitable for plant, animal, aquatic, or human life. Again, whether by design or default, the process is in motion and the experts are saying it cannot be stopped. You can sum this up either way: depopulation or extermination. Hurricane Katrina. Many people believe that Katrina was engineered by the use of weather modification technology to increase her intensity, duration, and her position in the Gulf. I don't know if this is in fact the case, but what I do know about weather modification, it is a very plausible scenario. Whether this was a natural or man-made disaster, Katrina, with assistance from FEMA, the government, and the Army Corps of Engineers, were able to get over 150,000 residents of Louisiana to voluntarily leave the state permanently. Not bad for a trial run. Let's take a look at what happened just before BP's Deepwater Horizon blowout and a couple of the, let's call them, supporting actors in this production: Transocean Marianas, who owned the rig, and Halliburton, engaged in prior to the accident. Number 1, going back to October 28th of 2009, right up to 1 month before the accident in 2010, top BP executives, including Tony Hayward, Ian Kahn, Byron Grote, and Andy Inglis, dumped over 500,000 shares of their company's stock. Why would they do that prior to the disaster? Prior to the disaster, BP realized the Louisiana light sweet crude they were anticipating turned out to be a combination of an oil tar substance slurried with volcanic mud, worthless on the commodities market. In the days prior to the explosion aboard the Deepwater Horizon, UBS sold over 2.1 million shares of BP stock, only to buy back 8.6 million shares in July 2010, post-disaster, at pennies on the dollar. The management boards of the Eurex Stock Exchange and Germany's Eurex Exchange decided on April 24, 2010, to introduce an equity option or a put option on the Transocean stock, an option open to insiders but not to general stockholders. I hope some of their stockholders are watching this. This option took effect the day of the explosion of the Deepwater Horizon on April 20th, 2010, giving them a full day to dump their stock before the news of the BP disaster hit Wall Street. Consequently, a few top executives at Transocean made a ton of money, and 11 men aboard the Deepwater Horizon lost their lives. Remember, people are expendable. Profits are not. In addition to the obscene amounts of money made by execs at BP and Transocean, BP was also looking to carve out their fair share of Transocean's $750 million insurance policy to mitigate their cleanup expenses. This strategy backfired as a U.S. district judge ruled against BP in this matter. Hours after this ruling, Transocean stock jumped from $4.91 a share to $51.45 a share, while BP's stock closed down only 10 cents a share at $47.26. Are you following the money? Halliburton, you know, that giant oil drilling concern Dick Cheney used to head up? And we all know he's as trustworthy as the day is long, right? Halliburton purchased Boots and Coots, an oil spill remediation company, days before BP's rig exploded in the Gulf of Mexico for $240 million. That's about 1/3 of Transocean's insurance settlement. Oh, did I mention that Dick Cheney was the one who blocked legislation that would have required deep water blowout preventers to be equipped with an acoustic switch, which would have enabled the wellhead to be sealed remotely? This is a safety feature required in all other countries involved in deep water drilling. Let me just show you this clip.
Spend the money for a system. It's a fail-safe system, absolutely fail-safe. It's a device system that's used all over the world, except in the United States, because we give them a free pass in the United States.
For example, is that, Mike? What system is that?
The system is called the acoustic switch system. It's a relay system that blows out the bottom of the catastrophe. In other words, it stops the oil exactly from the source. Now here's what's interesting. If BP has to do business in Norway, they have to use the switch. When they do it in the U.S., they don't have to use it. It happened because of this. During the Bush deregulation years, you had the Mineral Management Service that told companies like BP that, gee whiz, we have a new policy. It's the closed-door Dick Cheney policy. That Dick Cheney program allowed the industry to bypass safe systems like the acoustic switch, and there was no need to spend $500,000 with a company that was making $40 billion. It was a complete bypass of safety.
Okay, so Mike, are you telling our audience tonight that they were too cheap to spend $500,000 on the heels of record profits to put in an acoustic switch, which would have triggered the blowout preventer, which could have stopped all of this?
It's the most unreported part of this story out there, Ed. I don't know why the media's not talking about this, but that's what it came down to. Dick Cheney changed political policy with the energy industry. We all remember when he met behind closed doors with the industry. Yeah. This is one of the things that came out of there.
So they did all of this to save, I mean, I'm taken by this. They did all of this to save 500 grand? I mean, was this just a wealth of paperwork and
A Halliburton consultant, whose name was withheld, visiting the Deepwater Horizon 3 weeks before the disaster, informs BP their use of cement for well casings was against Halliburton policy. Well, the 11 workers that were aboard that rig are all dead now, so they won't be called to testify. In the days following the spill, BP contracts Boots and Coots via Halliburton to manage the oil spill remediation in the Gulf of Mexico and affected Gulf states. It is interesting to note that prior to the Deepwater Horizon incident, Boots and Coots revenues were around $11 million. After the incident, their revenues soared to over $209 million. That is a 1,900% increase. I don't know about you, but I can just imagine the money being amassed under the radar. The evidence speaks for itself. Although the exact figures presented may vary slightly from various sources in this research, the facts remain consistent. In conclusion, the evidence supports the following. Number 1. Months prior to the BP disaster, all parties involved were aware that A. There were mounting problems with the Macondo drilling project, and B. The project was forecasted to be a bust because, among other things, BP drilled into an asphalt volcano. Although they did hit oil, given the underlying conditions, the product in its current state of extraction was worthless. Number 2. The 3, let's call them supporting actors in this tragedy, conspired to manipulate the commodities market at not only a risk to their general investors, but to the fragile ecosystem of the Gulf, not to mention the risk to human life. Number 3, BP, Transocean, and Halliburton positioned themselves so that the ensuing disaster would be a more profitable venture than trying to salvage the oil drilling operation. Disaster capitalization, if you will. In order to reap maximum returns, this disaster had to be epic, and it had to be ongoing. Problem, reaction, solution. The Deepwater Horizon blowout, with no way of capping the well, ensured this scenario, and the sinking of the rig ensured Transocean a maximum payout by their insurer. Number 6, this disaster was created intentionally. A coincidence is one thing, but when there are several coincidences that occur in a logical sequence, this constitutes a premeditated plan. This incident plays well into the elite's depopulation agenda, Agenda 21. Could this be why there has been no criminal investigation to speak of, and why no one's been criminally indicted for insider trading, ecological destruction, or murder? This concludes Act 1. Please put your comments for discussion below. Oh, and if anyone out there knows a stockholder with BP or Transocean that lost a bundle on this disaster, please forward them a copy of this video. Thank you for watching. Please share these videos and stay tuned for Act 2, which will be posted shortly. I would be interested in your thoughts and would encourage an open dialogue on this particular aspect of the Gulf crisis. Thank you.